Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second working group session regarding the Fishtown District's master plan. We're so thrilled to have representatives from, we're focusing today on the intersection of Frankfurt and Lehigh, from our stakeholders, residents, civic leaders who are directly affected in that area, as well as representatives from the Streets Department, from SEPTA, elected officials. We really appreciate your time today and your guidance as we go through this. Most importantly, we're so thrilled to be working with Brian and Deb from ISA Architects. Just as a real brief background, Kay and I met with them, which seems like 15 years ago before the world changed, about doing a master plan for our corridor. And to do something where we are not only activating different areas, beautifying the whole place, making it more pedestrian and patron friendly. But as we went through it, certainly Brian and Deb, and they'll talk a little bit themselves, really focused in on kind of the essence of what Fishtown is and really honed in on the different intersections that make up our commercial corridor and how we focus on connectivity and accessibility to and from this neighborhood, because we know thousands of people come and go here every day. And we're certainly looking forward to that happening more as we get towards normalcy. ISA is such a wonderful firm. I tell everybody we spoke with a few, but nobody matched Brian and Deb's, not only just their talent, their project history, but really it's their passion for this neighborhood and wanting to be involved to really making the positive change we all want to see. So without further ado, one more thing. So what we've been doing is having these working groups where we really kind of hone in on designated areas and have the people that are directly affected by them not only hear the concepts we're thinking about, but to get your input. We started with one already at Front and Girard that went very well. So this is our second one. And we're so thrilled to have everybody today. Now I'll turn it over to Brian and Deb. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Deb, you going to share our deck?
Sure. I can do that.
So we're going to just give you a little bit of an intro with some of the thinking for the whole approach. It's not going to be exhaustive, but it'll kind of bring you into the headspace of how we've been thinking about the overall plan. And then really what we want to be able to spend our time doing today is to share some initial analysis and thoughts about the Frankfurt and Lehigh intersection, but to really allow you guys to talk about your experiences, give us some background and to kind of speculate about some of the improvements that could be made. Just to start, I think we so our firm is in the Crane Arts Building, which we know is not on one of the designated corridors, but certainly not far away. And these corridors have been a part of our daily life for 15 years. And we feel very much like the energy and creativity and vibe of the Fishtown Kensington area inspired us. And we've been really excited to be a part of thinking about its future through the lens of the bid. And I will just say that one thing that we really took as an initial sort of starting point was that the neighborhood's pretty good. We know it's, we think there's a number of things that can do better. We think that obviously there's going to be some challenges coming back from just sort of 2020, kind of turning the faucet off of sort of physical proximity and it being harder to do the things that we've been used to doing. But, I think we sort of made this slide just to think a little bit about what the Fishtown atmosphere is, which is, it's about creativity, it's about ideas and innovation and food and music and culture, the way people live and work and play. And I think part of this for us has been, not to use the plan to kind of sanitize the neighborhood and make it feel like other places, but to kind of amplify its existing trajectories, maybe organize it, give it a chance to continue to flourish, and also to think about the community expanding and being as inclusive as possible with kind of business owners and access to these corridors, and really thinking about sort of Fishtown as just such a great representative of what, you know, Philly can do real well. One of the things we did, this is a little editorial, but we did spend some time with the bid document, which is, as many sort of documents are, a bit of a beast. And we did sort of tease out this kind of reorganization and use some color coding to sort of enhance that. And I think really what we started to learn is that these two middle categories, projects and events, and improvements and maintenance, are these sort of actions, which I think we're a little more focused on with the plan. And you can see, you know, the idea of public art, facade improvements and greening, and events programming, and then as well as sort of public space, you know, streetscapes, things like lighting and furniture, you know, bike accommodation, and then of course, you know, trash and cleaning. So these are sort of the physical acts that we think the bid really is about. And then on each side of that, resources and advocacy and engagement and networking are sort of the soft edges of encouraging new business, reaching out for new sources of funding, promoting the corridor as a destination. So this was sort of our way of kind of organizing the kind of scope of the work. But I think the main thing that's led us to where we are today was really thinking about the territory of the bid, these three corridors, and just starting to make some observations about how Fishtown is very different, or how these three corridors, just as far as geometry and the way it interacts with the city, is very, very different than a lot of Philadelphia. I mean, to the left, orthogonal square grid, you know, it's a very easy city to get around. Many people from other places say that because the intersections are very, you know, predictable. But, you know, I still get a little lost in Fishtown. In fact, I just recently had that moment where I turned around and was like, wait, is that where that street is? And it's because the grid gets a little disrupted and there's more things going on. So these three corridors really show that that act. And we were particularly interested in this little space between Front and Frankfurt where they become so narrow they almost touch. And it also corresponds with a kind of critical mass of some of the bid members and some of the, I think what we come to know as the nightlife district, which is now really both Frankfurt and Front in a lot of ways. And so here you're seeing a map of the three quarters and all the businesses. And then we did a sort of overlay where we also looked at some of the connecting tissue, the green spaces, the kind of connecting corridors. I mean, we're really kind of committed to the idea that it's not just the three corridors, but it's also the streets that sort of connect to those corridors, and that, you know, these corridors can really spin off energy into the neighborhood, and it's a real energy for, it's a real engine for economic development and social connectedness. And this all led, I think Mark alluded to this, to our interest in sort of the intersection, which I think to date people have responded well to. And I think the idea of a corridor, you know, it's a line, it's a seam, it's a boundary. It's something that often runs between two different things on each side. And I think, you know, we all know this from many streets in Philadelphia. It's a typical urban condition. Geez, we got really excited about these funny shapes of all these intersections. It really represents the dynamic fabric of Fishtown. And so we don't necessarily think of the intersections in lieu of the importance of corridors. I think we see it as a complement, and the idea that corridors find strength in connecting between intersections. And so we also kind of liked the idea of the intersection as a connector and a place of meeting. These sort of iconic shapes off to the right here, we're imagining as an important branding tool that we can talk more about, and you'll see in the work that each of these intersections can become a kind of destination. So we mapped several of them running up and down these corridors, and we sort of, in this first pilot series of events, we identified Frankfurt and Lehigh, Front and Girard, and frontage will be more as maybe the 3 starting points at each end of the bid and then one in the middle. So Frankfurt and Lehigh really presents the kind of northern reach of the bid and is the northern endpoint. So that's what we're here today to talk about. And so what I thought we'd do, and I want to try to obviously not do all the kind of talking here. I wanted to share with you some drawings we made. We do have some ideas about ways into some design interventions, and I would love to hear you guys react to that. We have a couple of structured questions I think we can use to help with that. But so I don't know, maybe just to go back to the last one for a second, just to like orient. I don't know if you guys can kind of see this, but on the left is a plan looking down from the top. On the right is a 3-dimensional axon of kind of the same area, if you can make sense of that. You can see, you know, the co-op on the corner. I kind of know that warehouse is firewall printing. I'm probably leaving somebody out, but that's somebody we use a lot. So the gas station between Coral and Frankfurt, which is a funny little sort of triangular pointed zone. And then there's also a gas station there at the corner of Lehigh and Frankfurt. So it's kind of there's a distinctly arterial automotive vibe to the zone, but you know, it's changing. I don't know if we have a map of the upcoming development. Okay, but we've identified some of the projects obviously that have just been built and are coming, and I think we should probably think about it from that perspective a little bit. The other thing that's happening is the city, I know, has been doing some studies of the intersection improvements, and we show this simply because we know this is in the offing. I think it might be on a longer sort of burn than our project, but these are the 3 concepts that have been floated. I don't know, Mark, maybe there will be somebody at some point that can bring us up to date on that, but we just wanted to throw this out that this is a parallel study, and I think, you know, obviously we'll want to intersect with this work to some degree, sort of planning for the future.
Do you want to jump right to these, or do you want to go to the question?
Well, yeah, maybe we can look at these and then we can come back to the questions. So I think this is talking a little bit about some of the future development. And again, you're seeing the current layout of the intersection, but just to point out, you guys, I'm sure, are aware of the large project that's, I think, already occupied to some degree and is kind of continuing to get built on the northeast corner of the intersection. And then, you know, there's another project which recently went through CDR, which is really quite large. There on the south, on the east edge of Frankfurt, on that lot, which I think was upward of 100, 150 units. It was a very large project. So there will be some new residents living nearby, and some of these lots, which now maybe feel a little underutilized, are going to become you know, busier places. So we've been trying to think about that within the context of these improvements. And I think with a lot of our, you can kind of see the key at the top right of this plan: signage, lighting, vendor pop-up, planting, bike parking, art mural. I think they've sort of been some of the main channels we've been looking at, that we're looking at sort of across intersections. And you know, we'll be able to highlight some of those. So what we'd like to do is just share some of our initial reactions. We don't want to present this today as a solution. We want to present it as something to get our imaginations jogged, and to hear from you guys a little bit and your reaction to it, and to some of the prompts we have prepared. So I think one of the things that we're really noticing is the way that pedestrians and cars come together, particularly on the south edge of the intersection. I think, you know, the north edge is pretty predictable as far as crosswalks and one's ability to navigate. I mean, the overpass to the north is something that may come up in the conversation, but kind of connects to Harrogate. But I think that
Just to orient everyone, the right is the north.
Yeah, right is to the north. So you can see Lehigh's running up down here. It's a little bit, hopefully that's not too confusing.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things we've been really thinking about is this sort of pedestrian kind of orientation here coming between Frankfurt and Front. And I think one of the things we've been thinking a lot about is that I feel like if you kind of go up Frankfurt to the gas station, there's really nothing more dehumanizing than walking in front of a gas station and cars are coming in and out. And then you come up to this crosswalk. I think that's something that really, I think kind of diffuses a certain amount of energy as people come to this point here. And so we're thinking a little bit about how to bring people potentially across. And I think there's a number of competing things here. It looks like this large project here to the east at the bottom left of the slide is proposing a couple of mid-block crossings. And I know that Streets is probably involved in thinking about that process. It's a big enough project. So I think we're generally intrigued by the idea that there could be a place to cross. And this intervention we're kind of proposing here as a graphic or paint or extension of some of this triangular kind of chevron pattern would be really looking to mark that area as kind of a pedestrian zone. And I know that one of my sort of pre-pandemic memories of this was the Weirdo Festival that happened in the parking lot of Kensington Co-op, and that spilled out into Coral. It kind of wove into the Fireball Warehouse, and it kind of took over the gas station a little bit too. So it does seem like an area that of kind of potential activation that felt successful, and it seems to be it's also like a kind of a unique feeling space. Even though there's some things about the space that feel like they're about cars and the edges aren't feeling totally comfortable, that space in particular feels good. And so that was sort of, so this idea that could happen, and there's many complications with traffic and streets and various property owners, but we wanted to put that out. And then, I think we've been thinking on one of the things we've been thinking about a little bit is this idea of opportunities for vendors or pop-ups. We've been looking at that generally as a potential on edges of parking lots. I think we're sort of speculating a little bit, maybe coming out of that Kensington Co-op event that happened, that there could be some formalization of that at different times of the year or week when, depending on how the parking is being used. I think we enjoy hearing from you guys a little bit about edges that are underutilized and what else is can be done on edges. Thanks for reminding about the Head in Hand bookstore. It's a good one. Sorry to leave that out. That's right here, I think. It's right next to, it's like right next to Fireball, I think. They're like connected when you walk in.
Right here.
Yeah. So maybe we go to the next slide. We can come back to these. We just want to kind of go through our initial thinking, and then so there's a good view of that space, and the co-op facade has really added a real punch of color there, which is kind of fun. And I think part of what we were thinking about a little bit is this kind of use of that. We were sort of devising a kind of a vendor edge for Gerard that we were thinking could be kind of cool up here. We just throw that out as something for you guys to maybe kind of consume a little bit as an idea that they're, one of the problems with these open edges is they lose their street wall a little bit, and there could be an opportunity for an art-driven frame that might organize a vendor. And, when that vendor's not there and it's parking, it just also helps to kind of control the edge. And then, going to the whimsical side, we've been thinking, this idea, one of the things that I'm always sort of disappointed by sometimes, I don't want to sort of blame this on the kind of bids in general, but it's like everything kind of looks the same. When you're in the district, it's like there's a lot of repetition of the same thing, and it kind of takes the diversity out. So we've been thinking about these like fun icons that could represent different points on the corridor. I don't think we were drinking when we had this idea, but this funny like intersection icon that looks to us a little bit like a stick figure. We just instantly went to inflatable art man. Maybe we call him Big Frank. But this idea that there is a kind of, there's a moment, and honestly, like I always think of these things as happening in these slightly more car-oriented places. So I guess maybe what we're trying to convey with this is some things can be permanent, some things can be ephemeral and not necessarily there all the time, like could also be a beacon for an event or something. So here's looking from the other direction. This is north on Frankfurt. You can see the gas station off to the left. That new project would show up here on the right. And again, you can kind of see our, just again, to kind of sort of jog imaginations, this idea that there could be a way to lead people across the street safely. And I say that not minimizing the traffic challenges with that. And I think we're just throwing it out there as an idea to try to get people to have a chance to cross before they get up to the Lehigh. And then, the idea that some of the everyday pieces that might be here, like the gas station canopy, could be an opportunity. And then you can see kind of the co-op there in the back and that new project there off to the right. And so starting to try to piece together the future a little bit with some of these ideas.
Go back to some of the question slides.
Yeah, so maybe what we'd like to do is just kind of open up to you guys some reactions. And I want to say I don't necessarily want you guys to feel like you have to be like, I like that idea or I hate that idea. We're most interested in hearing you guys talk about doing business up there. And
back, and he says that the U.S. is, quote, a nation of news consumers, both overfed and malnourished. Americans gorge themselves daily on empty informational calories and
I hear a news story. If everybody could be on mute until we call on you, that would be great. Unless that was you, Brian, then great story.
I mean, it sounded interesting, certainly. Yeah. So here also just some kind of, I mean, this is also the way we've been walking through this idea of, and we can use this to kind of, structure your, feedback. This idea that we're interested in defining the intersection and the place, and we've kind of shared our read, but we'd love to hear about your business, what it's like to do business. What are some of the things that define the area around the intersection and what some of the players are. And then this idea of like amplifying what's there. We'd love to hear about some of the characteristics that you've really come to kind of love and things maybe that are a challenge, and then ultimately routes toward improvement. I think in the first session, there was a lot of great ideas, and I think people kind of went for it. And I think in a way, this is a pretty skilled group here. So I don't necessarily want to have us confined to each of these prompts in order, but I would just invite you guys to kind of go at it with these ideas in mind here.
And I'll start real fast, and this looks great, guys. Certainly feel free as we go through, either, jump in or put your question in the chat. One of the things I know that when we started as a bid, it was important for us to get the attention in parts of the corridor that weren't getting it. And certainly Frankfurt and Lehigh probably didn't get the attention that it deserved for all the great stuff that was there. And, Head in the Hand Bookstore just had a great write-up about, booking it for romantic date nights. So if I get a date, I'll go there. I don't know if we're allowed to go out. But I think what's great about our corridor, and why Brian and Deb nailed it, each area that we're hitting has its own unique personality. So we don't want to cookie cutter what we may do down at Frankfurt and Girard, or, Frankfurt and Master, as opposed to down there. My quick question is, Brian, with the inflatable art, I know there's always L&I issues with those types of things. Maybe we could try to find another type of, because I like the idea of having things to look at.
Sure.
So that may be a different way to do, because that.
Yeah. Well, we were also
going to get that might be one of the first things they flag on us.
So, and Mark, just to fill you in, I think that the inflatable art thing actually came from the Wiggly guide that the co-op has already been using outside, which the co-op got away with for the last year and a half and never had problems with L&I. So
Good. I go with what the group likes.
Nice.
Thanks,
I mean,
Kay.
an alternative, like an alternative idea was to use tires in some large tire sculpture. There's a lot of tire activity up there, as you know.
Yes. Yes, there are.
And by the way, the other thing we just wanted to mention is the northwest corner is for sale. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but that's for sale. I don't know if there's any knowledge of what might happen there or what. We actually were having a little bit of a hard time determining what exactly was for sale, how much of that and what piece it was, but I know it's the corner, but there's that other building, but that's also probably subject to change in the next couple of years.
Hey, Brian, can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
So the triangle formed by Carl and Frankfurt and then leading up to Lehigh. So it's really on the south side, but on our picture, it's on the left, on the east.
Yeah.
We go to the co-op and our daughter works over at Jinxed over on Memphis. So we're through that intersection fairly, and we're also going further up in Harrogate that way. So it is a wild and woolly intersection, which you alluded to, I think. Did you give any thought, is there any practicality to making some part of that triangle solid so that it becomes part of the crosswalk and it stops people from making right-hand turns when they're going east on Lehigh to go south on Frankfurt, to like cutting the corner, and people going left onto Carl when they're going west on Lehigh, cutting it. And then, but I also realized that there's the driveway for the co-op that's there. So maybe at the widest part of that triangle on the southernmost edge, that's where traffic can go both ways, so that you can get traffic across Carl out of the parking lot onto Frankfurt or vice versa. But the more northerly part of that triangle is solid, and maybe that's some kind of planting, or maybe that's part of your Frankfurt and Lehigh man standing there, and it becomes part of a crosswalk.
Well, so certainly, I think it's a great point, and I think what was just drawn on the screen represents actually, I think, one of the streets department options for the intersection. Like, in fact, we could even look at that at some point. I don't know that we want to interrupt this now, but so what was just drawn there, Skip, with that bump out where you almost, when you get to Coral, you're making a decision about which way to turn. You're not directly entering the intersection.
Right.
Those options from the street study seem to us, for I think some of the reasons you're saying, seem to be smart. Mark, one thing for us to think about is how this discussion intersects with that study, meaning.
Absolutely. And I know we have some friends from the streets department. Please feel free to chime in. I know, Rich, you're here. Certainly we want to make sure whatever we are talking about fits with what the city's going to be doing in the area as well.
So, the city was looking at it in conjunction with the water department as creating a green infrastructure bump out. We also have a study on Lehigh Avenue for a road diet, incorporating protecting bike lanes and things like that. So there's multiple things. We got ideas that are floating, and obviously the Planning Commission has a bunch of studies and ideas out there. I usually get involved once the funding and everything is done, and just got to build it. So it's kind of, there's a lot of ideas out there and how to make this whole area better. I've seen a lot. The one thing I do gotta warn you, I mean, both Frankfurt and Lehigh are state roads, so whatever we do, we need state buy-in into this.
Right.
But usually the state doesn't care much about what happens. They only care about curb to curb. They're really, most of the time, anything that happens outside of that area, they're not too concerned. So we're, right now we're open to listen to everything and see what's going to work and what's not going to work in the area. It's a little difficult because of all the development happening. and all the
Yeah.
housing, and whether people get it right or wrong, that'll be an interesting part. As you know, we're trying to offset vehicle cars by providing more bike infrastructure and encouraging people to bike. And as part of some of this project, I mean, a little further down the road on Frankfurt Avenue, we're going to put in the first modern roundabout, which will be quite interesting because it's a West Coast idea. And we'll see how Philadelphians react to ideas that are not from Philly. We don't tend to take them very well as a guy who brings all different ideas into the city. So, you know,
That's-
and the other thing is we in streets, you know, we want to remove, we used to want to put in asphalt. Now we're in the opposite way. We want to remove all the asphalt, put in green infrastructure, you know, reduce the heat index of the city.
Mhm.
And a lot of this asphalt just creates more heat in the summer, which is worse for us. So we seem to be going the opposite way. We were paving and now we want to remove it and give it to the water department. So
Can I throw something out? I just want to maybe connect with Skip's comments and the timetable with streets. I mean, as Richard was talking, I was thinking, you know, we're kind of talking about trying to influence this area a little bit. And if Coral is not a state road and it's a city street, I mean, could the co-op basically get a streetery permit?
yeah,
And I mean, it would be a streetery that would essentially close the street, but it would almost like,
that's a street closure.
okay, all right. But
So
I mean, would there
a streetery by definition can only be 8 feet wide.
the parking lane, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But I guess, I don't know. I mean, Mark, I'm just thinking like, would there be a more tactical, light way, you know, that's using more temporary construction that would be able to kind of test this? You know, it would almost be like the pop-up version of what we're doing other places that that might, because I'm thinking like people make this turn, right? You can turn left off Frankfurt down Coral, is that right?
Yes.
So you'd literally, I mean, I don't know how, I mean, it really would change some of the traffic patterns, but it would be in the spirit of the streets option B and C, I guess, right?
The volume of Coral is very minimal compared to the volume of Frankfurt.
Okay, yeah.
I would
Um,
just
kind of
also
interesting.
people get
And
confused.
Brian, just so you know, obviously with COVID and the streeteries and the closures, obviously we have a lot of them, and that's been part of what some of the business, I've worked with some of the businesses to do. So that in essence, the space, we're giving that extra non-drivable space, so to speak.
Yeah,
We'd have to look at it, but I mean, Coral gives an, and certainly the co-op would have to be favorable to it, but I
yeah.
certainly think that's something we can work on. Rich, quick question with the roundabout. Are we allowed to put out there that it's starting in a week, or do we have to wait for official word?
Short term, could you please wait for, since I'm starting construction without PennDOT approval?
You got it.
Richard, can I ask one other question about plans for that intersection at Frankfurt and Lehigh?
Sure.
Would that, is it right to assume that changes there would include dedicated left-hand turn and right-hand turn traffic lights?
It could, like I said, this is a planning study. So we're looking at everything. There are no, it's still not firm. We still haven't gone out to the community or brought, you know, internally, we're just trying to throw ideas on the wall and see what sticks. Eventually, we will be bringing in a designer, going out, doing better than our sketches that we do on Teams, and hopefully have schematics and things like that. We've been using Remix to try this, which is a new software that city bought that allows us to show plans in the right of way.
Just throwing it out there, that seems to calm down an intersection, and this one is, as I said before, kind of wild and woolly. And with the increased residential coming on stream with the various projects in the area, it would seem to be beneficial. That's 2 cents from a guy who's not working in the streets department.
We'll look at all that. I mean, like I said, part of the planning study, we'll look at everything, whether left turn lanes are needed, arrows, movements and things like that.
Before we move forward, quick question, because I don't want to put anybody on the spot. Is Greg Waldman from the Planning Commission on?
Hello,
Hey,
this is
Greg.
Greg from Planning Commission.
I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to add. I know we're still in the planning stages regarding that, or anything that might be illuminative regarding that intersection.
No, I'm actually stepping into a new role. We had a reorganization, and I'm just starting as the district planner for River Ward. So this is kind of a learning experience for me as well. Everything here looks pretty interesting.
Great. If we can, I'd love to let some of our neighbors that are on the call kind of chime in a little bit. And I know the food co-op is also on the call, because ultimately, they play a very valuable role in all this. So feel free, guys. This is your conversation.
Yeah, so I'll jump in from the food co-op. So I think for us, I think the challenge is with talks of eliminating the V or expanding the sidewalk. We have a loading dock that's on Lehigh Avenue, and a lot of times we get tractor trailers that park right on that V. And it's really the only loading zone space that we have. And so if that right turn lane ends up being gone from this Lehigh Avenue project, and then there's that sharp curve turn into Coral Street there, I don't know where exactly we'll be able to start accepting deliveries without sort of shutting down the street. So that's one concern that I have, as well as I think it's a nightmare certainly, but that V pass through is eliminating that from cars being able to make a left from Frankfurt Avenue into the into the parking lot would, I think, really impact our business in a negative way. I think we see a lot of traffic of people going to and from that Frankfurt Avenue. So that's just some initial thoughts right out of the gate for me as far as that V goes. I'm all for the right-hand turn lane being closed off on Lehigh Avenue. It's a terrible, dangerous intersection. It's a really wide walkway. So it'd be great to have some other walkways and situations, and maybe we can eat up some of this triangle and create a better walkway space from one side to the other.
Mike, were you saying that trucks pull up here?
They pull up, yeah, right there.
I see. Well, so, right, no, that I can see how that's valuable. I mean, is there a way for this little spot over here that got drawn next to your, I guess is that where your loading dock is your loading over here somewhere?
Yep.
Are you able to get a loading zone on Lehigh there, or is that not possible?
I could get a loading zone there. There's no curb. I'd have, there'd have to be a curb cut or whatever cut, but there's no.
Yeah, no, and it's not ideal. I realize you've got something that works.
My concern is in all of the plans, essentially that right there turns into bike lanes, parking lot.
Curbs, I see what you're saying.
All of that stuff going forward. So that would all get eaten up and gone away at some point.
Right. I mean, one of the things, so it seemed like one of the streets proposals was or maybe what we were also speculating about was if you were to control this, people could still do this, right? Like it would just be a little bit more controlled. And right. I guess I even wonder if you could somehow, if you controlled this, load there. I don't know, it's just, I'm just thinking it. I mean, I don't know if that works, but But I think what you're saying is that should never, like, that always needs to happen, whether it's coming through here or bending around that bump. People need to be able to get into your parking lot from all directions, which makes sense. Right?
Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
that's certainly true. And there, I mean, and yeah, the other challenge is sort of it does eat up, right? And parking's always an issue, right? But it does eat, it would eat, putting that out there would eat up those.
There's
the
parking
5 or
right
6
here.
spots right in
There's
front
2
of the
spots
co-op.
right there, right? Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
You guys own the lot, or you guys
And
rent?
I'll also add to this call, but
This whole
Got it.
information that's going to be very helpful, because what we want to do is, obviously, we love the co-op and we want to accommodate everything we can for the co-op and design around it for your loading, unloading, and everything else. But that's not going to happen, right? And there's a negotiation. It's good for us to know. I mean, obviously, the sooner the better, right?
We're mindful of the way the situation as is, so I think we can be, or should be, conservative in how we make the plan for there. If we have to adapt, so be that. Brian, when you agree?
Right. Yeah. 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 Well, and also to put the co-op in the best position that they can be in for issues of loading and parking. I mean,
Agree.
I don't know what it is that we can do, but just to keep that in mind. I mean, I think that it sounds like you guys might be put into a little bit of a tough situation potentially. And, I think everybody is very supportive of keeping you guys, going up there. So yeah, it's good to know.
Brian, can you go back to the picture that you had with the gas station that you put the sign on
Sure.
Frankfurt
Yeah.
towards Lehigh?
Sure.
That's the one. Because I think we could, yeah, I mean, and I like to listen, obviously, I think we talked before, I love the intersection logo in the streets. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, whatever we could do to beautify that part to help the ones that are there, because remember, there's going to be, as you correctly pointed out, there's a lot of development coming soon.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, which is great, more traffic. So I'm curious to what others feel could be helpful there as well as to what you see there.
I think what we came up with is kind of cool. It's good because, again, the gas station can get developed tomorrow, right? So we don't want to spend a lot of money on something knowing is going to get developed, in a couple of years, or you never know when, right? The whole corner can change. But I do like what we have right there. It's kind of nice and clean, and just just brings some cool attention to it. I like what you guys have done.
Agreed.
Do we have any idea? I'm assuming that I don't know if the gas station owner is on the call. I'm assuming maybe they're not, but do we have any idea what the future is of that parcel?
Not heard anything.
Yeah.
I think what we should do, Mark, is let's reach out to the the owner of the gas station, and if he's not on the call, obviously, and then we can just let them know what we're doing, and we'll find out what his intentions are, and hopefully let him work with us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll reach out again. I can imagine, and I don't want to speak for anybody. I'm sure anything that it will make it easier to find and go to and patronize, I think they would be all for. And the good part is with this design, guys, we're not cluttering things up. We're just simply trying to make it accessibility easier as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's so much change here that's active. I think we even learned about how much there is just by doing this analysis, right? There's a lot that's happening. I think there might be more that's happening. And then with the sort of streets plan, which I realize may be off a few years, but this idea that it's a more of a light touch and kind of tactical, like things that kind of, attachments and graphics and the inflatable stick man, but things that can bob and weave with the change and not be, whereas I think front Gerard, there's a lot spoken for there. We kind of know what we're up against, and there's probably a little less of change as far as buildings.
Just building on that a little bit, you know, I know in our last working session, we had talked about the idea that we might, one of the kind of toolkit items for the bid is, that would be really useful, is to understand how to control construction site edges.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great intersection to test some of those ideas, since we already have a construction site edge at that northeast corner. There's clearly going to be a large one here on the right-hand side of this image. And for all we know, there'll be others as well.
Yeah.
So thinking about some of those ideas about how we can plan ahead for future construction and how that construction is going to change the intersection could be for as much as a few months to over a year, depending on the scale of the project. So
The cattle chute.
yeah, exactly. I know we had some fun ideas about how to involve artists or design parameters as part of the construction fencing that might help to, you know, make the construction activity feel a little bit less obstructive to pedestrian life.
Yeah, Deb, I think that's great. And I know we were all for that.
So maybe in our renderings, we need to start to show these things under construction, not in their final
Right.
iteration.
Yeah.
There's like a bulldozer over there on the right.
Yeah.
Brian and Deb, did you see Andy Ortega's comment? He's from East Kensington.
Yeah, I just saw it. Let's. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, 400 units. There you go. It is like unbelievable. It's a big project.
Guys, can we go back to right in front of the co-op? You know, when we had that design where we also are looking to on the front in Girard with those. One of the things we kind of love those because they're, besides that they're kind of creative and modern, they also don't take away or block the obviously business that's there. So we're not going to block anything parking wise, but I'm curious to thoughts like that, especially Mike from the co-op, what your thoughts might be, knowing that we would be putting them there if everybody agrees.
I think it's great. I like it a lot.
Guys, anything further? We're coming up on an hour. I don't want to keep everybody. I mean, I think we, you know, it's great to see that we, you know, the designs are great. They're incorporate what that area is. And we're certainly looking forward to working with the Streets and Planning Commission on what's to come and how to best do that.
Mark, I just wanted to follow up on Andrew's comment because I think it's in a way a really big one, because this whole idea of potentially getting pedestrians across Frankfurt before Lehigh is really at the root of a lot of this. And, you know, I think now we're talking about what the developer might have committed to, or how that's going to require some real streets, you know, getting these mid-block pedestrian connections. I think about like that one on 2nd Street in Northern Liberties. I don't know how formalized that is, but you know, there is a crosswalk with a speed bump. And is it streets department or planning maybe who can be helpful in figuring out what our
The one in
options could
Northern
be?
Liberties, Blatstein Tower Development, and not building according to plan.
Right. So maybe helping to get this off to a good start and kind of getting it.
Technically was told not to do it and he did it anyway.
Right.
So uncontrolled intersections are sometimes, especially when you have multiple lanes of traffic, it's a little dangerous. And if you look at the study, like on 2nd Street, you may get one lane to stop, but not the second one. If you're doing one on Frankfurt Avenues, the recommendation is to put an island in the middle so the pedestrians only crossing one lane of traffic at a time.
Uh-huh.
And so it becomes very complex to do things. So our reaction, the city's reaction against everything was to go put speed cushions on an FAM route, which requires state approval, and we didn't get it. So now we own real estate that now comes out of your tax dollars, not out of your state money.
Mm-hmm.
So Hence why the streets department is the way they are towards developments now.
Uh,
In case you want to know, painting the street does, there's only certain colors you can use.
yeah,
Can't, any MUTCD colors cannot be used, anything that means something, purple,
Right,
red.
right.
So, I've seen a lot of things, and I've been working with Jane Golden because she wants to do murals at intersections. Unfortunately, colors all mean something in a traffic world.
Right, right.
So it's very difficult to, when people say, look what this person did. And
Yeah,
I will say, people point to New York, and New York told the feds they can shove it up there, but they also generate a hell more revenue than,
right, right. Yeah, yep,
and what I point to people is, my Vision Zero budget is zero. New York's Vision Zero budget is $50 million a year.
yeah,
So that should just tell you the scales we're talking about.
yeah.
What kind of color can we use, Richard? Can you share with us, please?
It's supposed to be like neutral colors, beige, brown, I believe. We can find that out.
We use pink?
I don't know. I gotta find out.
I mean, answer, brother. I mean, oh,
I gotta find out because I got myself in trouble for the Girard Avenue mural that was painted without approvals. So,
Okay.
yeah,
it'd be great if we know the colors that we can, team can play with.
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
yeah, and a lot of it is also through the discretion of the state DOT.
Sure.
Right,
So, because I got my hand slapped for Girard, and I got my hand slapped for 13th and Lucas. So,
right.
But it does
But
seem
it
like
sounds
we
like-
have a little more.
Like
leeway
coral,
here.
coral would be easier, right? Richard, is that what you're saying? Coral would be easier to paint than Frankfurt?
it would be a little easier. The state will still slap me because it depends on where their so-called jurisdictions.
I see, like they might, yeah. Uh-huh.
And that, and don't forget, I am bound by the city solicitor to follow the rules and regulations of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That is my oath.
We don't want Richard to get slapped anymore.
No,
No.
Bruce.
Keep
Richard,
in
I think
mind-
you know I only follow regulations to the T.
Now, the thing being is the streets department, the city of Philadelphia being a class 1 city, and in our charter states that for anything governing traffic, we must adhere to the rules and regulations of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
And also, we did invite PennDOT today, and I'm sure we'll all be in contact with them to make sure everything fits and there's no more slapping.
Now, I mean, we're all on the idea of trying to remove some of the asphalt, improve the pedestrian crossing, and the fact that things are changing in this area, going from warehouses to residential. It should all be taken into account.
Yeah.
And, plus there's the amount of small businesses that get generated from, probably another 1,000 residents moving into this area. It's something that we want to encourage. Streeteries are allowed on state roads as long as they follow the state guidance for traffic protection, which is, concrete barriers and all that. It's an expense that most small businesses cannot take on to do streeteries on state roads. And we're kind of working with the state on new guidance, so.
Right, right. Okay.
Awesome. Any final questions for Brian and Deb? And listen, this is not the only thing. We're going to take this back and certainly modify and work with what we have. But it's I want to commend Brian and Deb. This is really great. And not surprising, but we're really excited to get this plan together and then start to implement them. Certainly, like I put in the chat, we will make this recording available on our weekly newsletter blast. If you don't get it, go to fishtowndistrict.com and subscribe. We'll also place on our social media. So we have it. And obviously then we're going to keep going and we'll keep everybody posted as to the next intersection that we'll have our working group together, and then we're going to be kind of putting the whole plan together, then circling back to kind of show the world what we did. Brian and Deb, any final thoughts?
Just that I think, we're always available to be contacted. I know that, Mark's probably the guy that wants to be contacted, so he's aware of what's being said, but, I think we want to be particularly sensitive. I think obviously the co-op is a big player here, not to diminish anyone else. And, but if there's any issues that we can help to facilitate through this process, we want to make sure that this should only be making things better. That's one of the things we're going into this with. It should not be making anything worse. So we want to try to make good on that.
Yeah, and please feel free to contact Kay or myself so we can pass that on. Again, this is to help, and we certainly want to be mindful of, especially for all of you here, you're all directly affected by it. I want to thank Richard for being on. It's been very helpful. I want to thank everybody. I know our reps from SEPTA were on, the Planning Commission. So thank you for being part of the changes we want to see. And most importantly, thank to all of our stakeholders who are with us today. And enjoy the rest of your day. And we look forward to bringing this plan into fruition. So thanks, everybody.